by a guy named White. He's a law professor at University of Arizona. It's called Underwater and Not Walking, and then something about that. And it's like, but he does this analysis, and it's beautiful. You know, it's like, it was, of course, you know, panned by the Wall Street Journal and Financial Industry News, but it's being cited by some judges, and it's getting more attention. Essence of it, though, is he says, hey, wait a minute. Goldman Sachs, or no, not Goldman Sachs, what's the other one? Anyway, a particular one. Anyway, the point is, like, when they have a bad loan, they have properties, you know, it's like even the Mortgage Bankers Association. Let me start with that one because I remember. Mortgage Bankers Association was buying this $78 million property in DC, right? And, you know, things start going bad, so it was underwater by I don't know how much. So they walked, you know, and they're renting now till the market picks up, a few blocks down. But still, they're chastising the homeowners. And White's article is, I know there's a link to it on this blog I have, but it's like, his point is like, wait a minute, why is the burden being laid on American homeowners? They lay the guilt, the burden, the anxiety. You don't pay your mortgage, you're untrustworthy, reliable. Whole credit reporting system is set up to measure your credit worthiness, the very word. Be worthy. Oh, I'm not worthy because I didn't meet the credit, my credit score is bad, whatever. All of that is orchestrated to put the burden on those least able to bear it. But the ones who run the system, you know, if homeowners decide like they do, they'd walk from houses if they're underwater, right? Now, that said, I don't advise people to walk to breach and obligate. People come, hey, I get a free house. And the danger is a lot of the blogospheres. I get a lot of calls from people, hey, right, they don't even know how to get a free house. No, wait, stop, no. There's a lot to figure out about what's going on with this particular obligation, you know. And, but I stay away from people who want something for nothing. And there also is the conscious choice to do things. Like you talked about, Andrew. You guys, you know, hey, you got some money, you know, you used it and all this, and that's good, you did that, right? And it's like, but that's something that a court would weigh not in your favor, you know, and again, I'm just talking straight from my experience, because you benefited from that. You know, you had the money, not that they have the note, not that they have a right to foreclose on your property or anything like that until they can show it. But that also gets to just foreclosure in a non-judicial manner without evidence. What that means, if judges start, you know, granting motions to dismiss because they don't have the documents, they're not going to just start giving away free houses. What they're going to do is say, okay, if they start doing it, which they're not doing yet, maybe because they see this was just where it would go anyway, they're going to require it to be a judicial proceeding where it's like, okay, let's have a complete litigation over this and let's quiet title against people who don't have an interest in this, and let's reform this mortgage so the people who owe the money will know who to pay, and the people who the money is owed to will know they're going to get the money, and they'll work a whole new deal. They could, even pooling and servicing agreements, allow them to reduce principal, reduce interest, change terms of loans, all of that stuff, you know, like some of them do. I've seen some that do, some don't. They are allowed to do this stuff, but they're not doing it, you know. So it's like, I'm losing track of where I started now. It's like, but it's related to like conscious choices made by the participants in it in some way, but, oh yeah, and it's like feeling like your own thing. Like if you benefited from the money, you know, that's okay. You still want to make sure you get justice in the courts. But if you're in litigation, the judge is going to weigh that in one way. If you walk away from your home, the judge is going to weigh it in one way. I have a client, I'm not going to talk about cases, but it's like, this particular one is like, let's say hypothetical in a mediation, right? And it's like trying to figure it out. We're getting close to getting a deal here, you know, and it's like, but, you know, the servicer is not willing to do something. And my clients, you know, they intentionally stopped making their payments because they wanted to talk to a real person. You know, that's held against them. Oh, you intentionally defaulted. That's all they want to know. You know, and the judges look at that way too, right? And these are intelligent people. They're both MDs. They live in Denver. They wanted to talk to a real person, so they stopped making their payments. And that's not good for their case, that they stopped making their payments. But still, we've got, you know, a negotiation underway to get this thing done after a year and a half of litigation. So it's like November, and we had deadlines coming up. You know, I'm talking to the lawyer for the other side. And I says, well, why don't we just continue all these deadlines, because we just did a mediation, have an ongoing, we're bouncing proposals back and forth, and continue it all until like January. He says, yeah, that sounds good, because he's swamped. He's a bank lawyer. He's done his work, you know. Not as busy as I am, but it's like he's real busy. And it's like, so he was willing to continue it. And I said, besides then, over, you know, the winter holiday, maybe your clients will be visited by the spirits of Christmas future, and they'll come up with a loan that my clients can afford and that they can live with, and they'll have a performing mortgage instead of another foreclosure. And he just goes, huh, that was it. That was the end of the conversation. Right, but that's the world I live in, right? I was trying to inspire him with, you know, Dickens, but no, it didn't go anywhere, you know?
Yeah, it really looks like the banks are really not in the least interested in performing loans. They're not interested in working it out with the homeowner. They seem to be in this rush to foreclose. You just described a possible scenario that would move a case forward.
The way I would put it a little differently, and this gets into this whole conscious economics thing, because there's so many participants, and I'm not an economist even, you know, but it's like I'm a philosopher, psychologist, you know, not a psychologist. That's my background, philosophy, psychology, law, and all this stuff. I was in first year law, I was remembering too when you were talking. It was like, I showed up there, like I said, I went to law school not to be a lawyer just because something to do, but I'm there. And the first day, one of the first courses you take in law school, you have property, contracts, torts, you know, some basics, constitutional law. So property, first day of property law, they have this obtuse case from way back in England in whenever it was. And anybody who's been in law school would know it's like, it's fox. You know, this fox is running across the ground. It's somewhere, and then it runs on the queen's property, and then it goes somewhere else, and then somebody chases it, and then they ended up getting the fox, and then all this stuff, and it's like, so then the question was, and he killed the fox. He says, the question was, who owned the fox? Or no, what are the issues in this case, type thing, right? So then this guy asked the question. So then it's like going around, people say, whether the fox was trespassing, whether the fox was trespassing, whether the hunter owns a fox, whether the hunter owns a fox, president, whether the king owns the fox, whether the king owns a fox, whether da-da-da, you know, goes on and on. So I raised my hand, you know, first day of law school, I said, whether there's a right to own property. And you know, the law prof, like, just walks all the way across the front of the room, scratching his chin, and he turns around and he walks all the way back. He says, we'll assume, for purposes of this course, that there is such a right. You know, so I got that clear, first day property. But I had to do that, because that was my fundamental question, right? So anyway, given that, so it's like, we're all in this thing about mixing up what are the various interests, and the complexity of it these days is enormous, right? And it's just, the people who have interests in foreclosing and all that, they have some valid interests, but there's other stuff going on. You asked Andrew, you know, they just don't have an interest in working with a homeowner. I'd say in my experience, you know, that's how it's felt and that's how it occurs, okay, that they have no interest. But on the other hand, they have interests in, you know, keeping their jobs, their families. I'm not trying to defend them here. I'm just talking about if we're going to get into a conversation about conscious economics, you need to be all participants involved in it. And the homeowners are getting screwed right now, no question. And my focus is what I'm proposing here, because that's, I think, something that would make a big difference. But you have to look at all the participants, and the whole thing needs to be reevaluated. You know, the economic structure of securitization, the economic structure, like, you know, borrowing money to secure an interest in property. You need to talk to the real person, you know, if you're going to be dealing with that sort of thing. You need to have, like, government protecting your rights from, you know, cops and robbers. You know, your title's a good one. I think, you know, cops and robbers, it's like all this stuff going on, and then, you know, the people that are getting screwed are who? Ordinary homeowners who are getting all these burdens laid on. Anyway, I'm talking too much. Once I get started on this, I can go on forever. But.
Well, I think one thing you can talk to Kenny Frost here, the native knowing is the no one owns.
That was my question, first day property law, whether there's a right to own property.
So we get back down to that.
Yeah.
One request, please, is do not speak unless you have a microphone. You did. How about you one time? Oh, I'm sorry.
Am I on? Am I on?
One of the rules of film crew said,
yeah.
Make sure that anybody who speaks has a microphone.
Right.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, you know, just to bring it to its essence, you know, do we have a right to own property? Here, your first day, and yeah. So I mean, just throwing the whole mess up in the air and coming down to the essence of life, you know.
Well, states in America that we do. Okay, as a lawyer, a U.S. lawyer, I mean, I'm fighting over property rights all the time. You know, given that fundamental question is there, but still that.
But in the higher realms, in the universal law of it all.
Well, then you get into what's it matter, You know, it matters in how you construe it in your consciousness. And of course, you know, you need shelter, food, safety, all this, you know, it's like, but it's like,
the inalienable rights.
well, yeah, you get, but then the thing about, I think that, and again, like I said, my entry point into this was representing homeowners, right? What I concluded along the way in this litigation is like, for a first step, we need to change the legislation, and we need to change some rules, and we need to educate judges and about the law and all this stuff. And what you find is judges really know the law, believe it or not. They know the stuff. They're constrained by what the precedents are, by what the rules are, by what the statutes are, and they also have their own biases and their own preferences, right? They have their own, you know, jurisprudential consciousness, right? And it's different with every judge. But I'm trying to find places where I can make a difference, okay, like legislation, regulations, cases. Pick good cases and focus on them, try to make a difference that way. And I think, though, that's all I can do. You know, I mean, the hardest thing is not being able to help everybody. You know, I get calls and I'm in this law firm now, and they're not letting me talk to people so much because I'll listen for 2 or 3 hours and sympathize with people, but I'm not able to do billable hours. I'm learning, okay, well, that makes sense because I got to get paid. I got to be able to buy food and all that too, you know. But they're being very patient with me, you know. So it's like, because they, you know, they respect what I'm doing, and that's good. But there's that, you know, element of it too, you know.
I think you bring up a great point, is talking about getting everybody together. And I know Luann would agree with this when we decided to form this organization. And we went to the Aspen Institute, and it was definitely a little cutting edge event talking about consciousness, brain science, meditation, and mindfulness practices. And we just initiated. Rita has been doing these events in the Valley for a long time with Davina Kent, bringing conscious people in, seeing the new way that we can live together. And we just did it. And I realized that just literally, you make a poster, you put something out that says, I want to bring all these people together in a room, and that Einstein quote, you can't solve the problem in the same consciousness of which it was created. To have a different consciousness behind it, which is what you're talking about, is you know, connecting with people from the heart and seeing that these are people and their families we're affecting, and just literally initiating a summit, call it a conscious, you know, foreclosure summit or whatever. And I believe instantly you'll start drawing in the right people who are really aligning with you, and they just are feeling like they're underwater, they're alone in that feel, you know, because they do go home at night and they do feel sad, but you know, they're putting on that face of what they're supposed to be, but they know again in their gut it's not right. And so I just feel that we just initiate something like that, and it, you know, they say, what was it, Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. And if we have a summit or something, you know, like that, and you'll attract the people that can really change these laws, I believe.
Like this event, you know, we're here because, you know, Andrew and Connie created this event, right? To try to raise consciousness, you know, educate people about what's going on. And they invited me, and I'm like, I don't know what I can say, but I'll come, you know. And I said, I can talk about legislative program, you know, blah, 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 you know. She says, that's good. And I show up, and then she says, you're going to be, so, oh my God, a conscious business leader. What am I going to do now? I'm going to be in the presence of But anyway, but it's cool, and it's an event that you guys created, and I thank you for inviting me here.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for coming.
And there more will come from this, and it's cool.
Let me say a couple of things, if I may. So I think it's become exceedingly clear how complicated this situation is, and that there's absolutely no chance that we in this little panel for a couple of hours tonight are going to get anywhere much other than really, really big picture, really broad strokes, you know, the big strokes.